Hey guys, thank you for coming back to another one of my What's for Dinners. This week I'm collabing with Ashley Bailey. She's actually from Ireland, and I just think it is so interesting to see how differently people cook all over the world. I have been subscribed to her for quite a while now, and I really do think that you guys would enjoy her content. She does the grocery hauls, lunchbox ideas, of course the dinner videos, and other things in between. She has a big and beautiful family. She has 5 kids, so if you're interested in like the larger family style videos, she is your girl. So there will be links to her channel as well as her video down below in my description box. I would love for you guys to go and check her out and show her some love. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump on into my week of dinners. For Meatless Monday, I tried a new recipe for a pesto and spinach, macaroni, and cheese. So to make this, I just started by adding some macaroni noodles to some boiling salted water, and I just cooked those according to the package directions. And then in a separate little saucepan, I'm going to get started on the cheese sauce. So I'm going to be making a roux. I melted my butter and added in a couple tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and I just whisked that for a couple of minutes to get rid of that raw flour taste, and then I slowly added in some milk, and I just let that simmer until it thickened. So after my pasta was done, I drained it off, obviously, turned off my heat, and then to that same sauce pot, I added in 5 ounces of fresh spinach. And I'm just kind of breaking up the leaves into smaller pieces, and I'm just going to stir that around until it wilts. Then I'm going to take that drained pasta and just dump it in on top, and then I'm just going to toss those two things together. And then I'm going to finish off the cheese sauce. So it has thickened, so I removed it from the heat. And then I added in a half a cup of freshly shredded Parmesan cheese, as well as a quarter cup of this Classico basil pesto. And I just stirred that until the cheese melted basically, and it was done. I just took that and I poured it all over the top of the pasta and the spinach. And then I'm going to be seasoning it with plenty of salt and lots of black pepper. And then I'm just going to give it a final stir, and it is done. So I like this recipe, but I didn't love it. I definitely wouldn't call it a macaroni and cheese. It just wasn't cheesy enough. It reminded me more of like a lightened up Alfredo just with some pesto. So if that is your thing, maybe you'll really like it. On Tuesday, I made some smothered burritos. So I started off by browning up 1 pound of ground beef that had been seasoned with some onion powder. And then I drained off the grease and added in some minced garlic. I also seasoned it up with some salt and pepper, cumin, and garlic powder. If you're new here, anytime I use a recipe, I always have it linked down in my description box so that you can get the exact measurements if you are interested. So I'm also going to be adding in a whole can of these diced green chilies, and I'm just going to stir those around real quick. And then I'm going to also be adding in a can of refried beans. And I'm just going to let that heat up for a few minutes until it all mixes together pretty easily. And then I'm just going to set that to the side and get started on the sauce. So in this little saucepan, I'm going to be adding in a 10-ounce can of this red enchilada sauce. I'm also going to be adding in a can of chili with no beans. This is like the hot dog chili sauce. And I thought that was really interesting to add on top of burritos. That is what caught my attention to make this recipe. You're also supposed to add in a can of tomato sauce, but I completely forgot it, so just left it out. So I know that this beef and bean mixture doesn't look too appetizing, but I'm just going to be placing a good scoop of that on top of a burrito-sized tortilla. Then I'm going to top it with some Fiesta blend cheese and just roll those up into burritos. Add those to my sprayed 8x8 baking dish, cover it in the sauce, add some more cheese, and pop it in my oven. I topped my burrito with some dried chives, and then I spooned plenty of that sauce over to the side. And then for the toppings, I just have some sour cream, lettuce, and tomatoes. I didn't make any sides to go along with this because this is very filling in itself, and it honestly just doesn't need it. But we love this recipe. It was delicious. The only thing that I would do differently next time is I would probably leave out the green chilies. We didn't really care about those. On Wednesday, I figured I could throw in a low-carb option since I get requests for that sometimes. So I made a lemon, asparagus, and garlic butter chicken. So I started off by adding my asparagus to my pan, and I just covered that in water, and I just let that boil for 2 minutes. And then I'm going to be taking some tongs, and I'm just going to remove those to a separate bowl that has some ice water in there. So I'm going to be stopping the cooking process. So I guess you would consider this blanching the asparagus. So I'm just going to set that to the side, and then I'm going to dump out the water that was in my pan and wipe it down with a paper towel. So to the same skillet, I'm just going to be melting some butter. I'm also going to be adding in some olive oil, and then I'm going to add in my chicken. So the recipe said to use chicken breast, but I had some boneless, skinless chicken thighs in my freezer that I wanted to use up, so I just diced those up into bite-sized pieces, threw those in my pan, and I'm just seasoning that up with some salt, black pepper, onion, and garlic powder. I'm also going to be using this Trader Joe's 21 seasoning salute, and I am just going to give that a stir to get everything coated well in those seasonings. So in this particular recipe, you really want to brown up your chicken. To do that, you would want to use a cast iron skillet, but mine are not well seasoned at the moment and everything is sticking to them, so I wasn't even going to fool with that. And also, you don't want to overcrowd your chicken because you're wanting to brown all sides, but I was lazy and I didn't feel like cooking it in batches, so what I did is I added in some paprika to give it that nice golden color, I guess you could say, and it did the trick. So once my chicken was fully cooked, I just added some minced garlic to my skillet, as well as some Italian seasoning. So there are lots of different seasonings and yummy flavors going on in here. So now that that is ready, I'm just going to remove it to a separate plate and set it to the side. To that same skillet, I'm going to add in some more minced garlic, and I'm just going to saute that around for a couple of minutes. And then I'm going to take some chicken broth, and I'm just going to add in a little bit to deglaze the pan, and I'm just going to scrape all of those flavorful bits off the bottom. Then I'm going to add in a little bit more butter and some lemon juice. And then lastly, I'm just going to add in several dashes of hot sauce, and then I'm going to add in some parsley. I'm just using the dried stuff. And I'm just going to let that simmer until it reduces down a little bit. And then I'm going to be tossing back in my asparagus. I'm just going to coat it in that sauce, and I'm going to let it just go for a couple of minutes just to warm it back up. And then I'm also going to dump my chicken back in, toss that around in the sauce, and it is done. So here is my plate. I just topped everything with a little bit of extra parsley, and then I just have 2 little slices of lemon just to make my plate pretty. But this was so yummy. I love this recipe so much. You don't have to be on a low-carb diet to enjoy something like this, and I'm definitely going to be making it again. On Thursday, I made some Instant Pot chicken and dumplings, so I turned my Instant Pot onto saute. I melted some butter, and then I added in some celery and some diced carrots. If you wanted to add in an onion, you would do it at this time as well. I'm also going to be taking a good amount of minced garlic and just adding that to the bottom and sauteing that around for a couple of minutes. And then I'm going to be pouring in 6 cups of chicken broth. I also wanted to mention that I am using the recipe from Pressure Luck Cooking. They also have a YouTube channel on here, so I will link their video down below in my description box, so you should check that one out as well. So now I'm just going to be taking a whole chicken that I have cut up into pieces and adding that in. Not going to lie, it was a huge pain. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I got it done. I'm obviously going to be leaving the skin on. That's going to give this a lot of flavor. I'm going to push it down into that broth, add in a couple of bay leaves, pop my top on, and make sure that it's set to sealing. And then I'm going to set my time for 10 minutes. When the timer went off, I did a quick release, and then I'm just going to remove the bay leaves, and then I'm also going to take my chicken and remove it to a separate bowl to cool down. So now for the seasonings, I am using some rubbed sage, some onion powder, parsley, seasoned salt, poultry seasoning, some thyme, and some pepper. And I'm just going to add that in the broth. My pot is turned off. I'm just going to stir that together, and I'm just going to let that hang out in the corner while I make my dumplings. So to this mixing bowl, I'm going to be adding in 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, as well as 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Don't use baking soda, make sure it's baking powder. And then I'm also going to be using a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to whisk all of my dry ingredients together, and then I'm going to take a 1/2 cup of milk and 2 tablespoons of butter and microwave that for 1 minute just to melt the butter. And then I'm going to add that into the dry ingredients, and I'm just going to stir everything together with a fork just until it turns into a dough. Now I'm just going to turn that out onto a piece of parchment paper that has been dusted with some flour, and I'm just going to knead that for about a minute. You don't want to overwork it or you'll have some tough dumplings, but just until it's workable. And then I'm going to roll it out thinly with a rolling pin and then cut it into dumplings with a pizza cutter. Next, I have just whipped up a quick little cornstarch slurry to thicken up my broth. So all that is 3 tablespoons of cornstarch to 3 tablespoons of water. I have turned my Instant Pot back on to saute to bring that broth up to a rolling boil, and I'm just going to slowly add in that slurry while I am stirring. Then I'm going to take my dumplings and I'm just going to drop them into the hot broth one by one. And then I'm going to loosely put my top on and I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. And then I am going to cut the heat off. Those dumplings are done. So now I have just took my chicken, I have removed the skin, and I have took the chicken off the bones and just shredded it up. And I'm dumping that back in. I'm going to stir that on in. Lastly, I'm just going to be taking a half a cup of heavy cream and stirring that in, letting it heat through for a few minutes. And it is done. Your whole house is going to be smelling amazing by this point. So here is my bowl. I just topped it with some extra black pepper. This was an awesome recipe. All 4 of us loved it. This is fall comfort food at its finest. Chicken and dumplings will always be one of my favorites, and I just loved this recipe. And it made a ton, so we had this for leftovers on Friday as well. Saturdays are the one day of the week that I don't cook, so we went out to our local Mexican restaurant, and I got what I always get, the chicken with cheese sauce, rice and beans. It is Sunday night. Ignore my dirty stove. I'm about to make a really simple meal. So first off, I just have these pork chops that have been marinating in my fridge for several hours in this Lawry's teriyaki marinade with pineapple juice. I made this not too long ago and we really liked it. The gas on my grill is still out, so I'm just going to cook these on the stovetop just like last time. And I'm going to serve it with some roasted broccoli. And then back here, I'm trying something a little bit different. They're called melting potatoes. I just saw it on Pinterest and thought they looked interesting. So all I've done is take 3 russet potatoes and I just cut those in half so they are in big pieces. And I have covered that in chicken broth and put in some minced garlic and a little bit of salt. So that is going to really flavor those. And then I'm going to cook those until they're fork tender. I'm going to drain them and then I'm going to cover them in some oil, some more seasonings, and then they're going to go in the oven to crisp up. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this all up. So here is how those pork chops turned out. They were super flavorful. I absolutely love those Lawry's marinades. And those potatoes were really good. It was a fun way to switch things up. It was crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. Seasoned perfectly. Loved them. And that roasted broccoli is always awesome. So that is going to wrap up another week. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget it's a collab with Ashley, so go and check out her video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have an awesome week, and I'll see you in my next one.